Bhakti, the worship, a sense of worship and devotion is at core of all of us, irrespective of what belief we believe in. And
Right.
once the chords are struck, then you reach to your source of belief. That is what is beautiful about worship. See, the reason Indian music is relevant is because it actually is structured at the core concept of the human social life. Long before I heard, or perhaps the term of gamification was coined, I think my mother used to teach me in a gamification way. What that means is she would hum a tune and say, can you guess what rag this alap is in? I live a life that is in the 21st century. And if I'm living a life in the 21st century and my music does not reflect that, then I'm singing someone else's music. Quite a few people use Indian classical music very beautifully. A.R. Rahman does, like I said, Shankar Hassan Loy do, Preetham does.
Welcome to News 18 Showsha. I am Yatamanyu Narain, and today I am with the most acclaimed Hindustani classical vocalist, Mr. Mahesh Kale, who just wrapped up his Abhangs tour across multiple countries. So we are going to talk about that and more. Hello, sir. How are you?
Namaste, how are you? I'm good.
I'm also doing well, sir. So, your recent Abhangs concert tour, after a 7-year long break, was widely acclaimed. It was well received by people. So, how was the experience of reconnecting with your global audience post pandemic, and what stood out to you during this entire tour?
It is beautiful to be reconnecting after the pandemic.
Right.
And of course, there's a lot of pent up want.
Yeah.
All of us globally suffered through the pandemic. We
Right.
experienced it together.
Right.
The feeling was mutual. I was raring to sing, and the people were raring to listen. And
Right.
Abhangavari is a program concept that is very dear to my heart because I
Right.
grew up singing Abhangs, and it's a tradition that I think represents Maharashtra. So it was beautiful to see the reception for a traditional Maharashtrian thing
Right.
across the world. So we
Right.
started in the Bay Area, then we took it, of course, to Maharashtra, but also to South India in Hyderabad, Chennai, and Bangalore. And
Right.
the reception was nothing short of stupendous. I'm very grateful to all my audiences for showing so much of love. Bhakti, the worship, a sense of worship and devotion is at core of all of us, irrespective of what belief we believe in. And
Right.
once the chords are struck, then you reach to your source of belief. That is what is beautiful about worship. So
Right.
that's Bangavari in a nutshell.
Right. Right, sir. So now, sir, you have also composed several bandishes and abhangs yourself. So how do you approach composing within the framework of Hindustani classical music while you are ensuring that it remains relevant and accessible to also modern listeners?
You know, to do that, it is not an exercise in design, but it's an exercise in living.
Okay.
So, of course, I have been training in the heritage music tradition, Indian classical music
Yeah.
tradition. So that training is an ongoing process for many lifetimes. So
Right.
every morning, irrespective of where I am, I wear my student's hat. I
Okay.
try to learn as much as I can on an ongoing basis.
Right.
But I also remind myself to live today's life. So I was in Indonesia. I landed yesterday.
Okay. Okay.
I make sure that I go in the market, I go in the place where the locals come. I want to understand what their flavor of life is, what their choices are. And if
Okay.
you keep on doing both of these, then I think the creation automatically pours out in an amalgamated way. So
Mm-hmm.
I know the tastes and sensibilities of people across because I do a lot of concerts
World
across the.
too. Yeah.
And I also am in touch with my traditional self as far as my music goes.
Right.
So the two automatically come together. I'll give you an example. We were doing a an immersive weekend workshop here in Santa Cruz in California.
Right.
And we went for a walk after a couple of sessions in the afternoon. Coming up, there was a beautiful nature spot.
Right.
So the student said, "Sir, should we sit here and do our next session?" So we were sitting on the lawn, surrounded by a lot of trees. It was the last day of the workshop, Sunday. So what came to me was inspired by something in Santa Cruz, but what it spelled out was "Bolana lagi ab moso dari dari
Oh,
pati pati chahu
yeah,
disa ora manoso bhati."
क्या बात है.
कोमल रवि किरण मन भावन अनिल चलत अत मखमल शीतल मोरा जिया अत ही सुख पावत ना ही भात कछु काज अब मनुसो बाकी, because we were going back and it was like, oh, we are going to our mundane work. Not me, because I go to music, but students were going back to work. So what sounds it sounds as a very traditional Bandish in Vrindavani Sarang because it was an afternoon session, but
Yeah.
it was inspired by Santa Cruz, California, the big Sierra
So,
trees.
so that is how you they incorporate your surroundings in your when you are going across with your
I
Abhangs.
remind myself to be aware and present wherever I am,
Right.
and then Mother Nature just has a way of affecting you. You just
Interesting.
have to be available to receive.
Interesting, sir. So, I mean, your concerts also feature a wide variety of genres. I mean, from classical to semi-classical to devotional to even Hindi film songs. So, how do you strike a balance between traditional Hindustani classical music and more popular forms?
At core, I am a classical musician who also sings semi-classical forms. When I sing the film songs, they are in a way something that I quote to let people know that, oh, the classical music is not far out. So if I'm
Right.
doing a Lagi Kare Jua Katar, which is in Khamaj, then I will end up quoting O Rang Rez Tere Rang Darya Mein. And then there is a sudden
So,
association of notes. They
yeah,
know that there is similarity across genres. So my effort is to draw more people to classical music, make classical music more contextually relevant,
right,
which it is, but show it in a way that people actually are able to tell the tale.
right,
That's
right.
how it is. And like I said, on a day-to-day basis, in modern times, we eat Indian music, Indian food for the most part. It's our soul food.
Yeah.
But we also go have Chinese food, Italian food. I'm a foodie, I'm a food lover. In a
Mhm.
similar way, at core, my soul food is my Indian classical music and its subgenre.
Indian, yeah, Indian
And
classical.
I go and, sometimes stroll in the gardens of lighter veins.
Right, right, right. So I was coming to the teaching part, like with Mahesh Kale School of Music. I mean, you were working to promote and sort of preserve the Indian classical music across several countries. So I mean, what challenges do you face in teaching classical music in a global setting, and how do you tailor your teaching methods for international students?
So the biggest shift from how I learned in a Gurukul system
Yeah,
versus how I'm teaching right now,
yeah.
the biggest shift is in the expectation, because all of us that were studying from my Guruji Pandit Jitendra Abhisheki were looking to do music as an extremely sincere passion.
Mm-hmm.
Many of my students here actually come back to music because it has been a dream that was unfulfilled while they were growing
Oh,
up. They
okay.
were studying. That although I have a few students that are full-time musicians, and I feel very happy for them, but that's the challenge. And
Right.
then, because I did not want to wait till I was older and start teaching then, because I am not able to travel. I
Mm-hmm.
know when I travel, I move around. There is a lot of energy related music that is going on, and I wanted that energy and my teaching to affect each other in a positive way. When
Okay.
people see me sitting on the stage as a source of inspiration, music is always a source of inspiration. And they want to say, I want to sing like that. I want to learn what they are doing. And
Mm-hmm.
can come to me or my school. And essentially, that is what is being taught. Since I
Right.
travel, I have to, tread different time zones to make it happen. In fact, as we speak, on my mother's Punya Tithi, her
Mm-hmm.
birthday,
Oh,
October, 6th,
okay.
we do a student recital here. So my house yesterday was packed with students. There were
Okay.
about 70, 80 students. You'll see that every nook and corner of the house, there is a different rag. And I feel very grateful. So
Right.
tomorrow is the concert date
Right.
of the students. And I feel just as excited, perhaps more, attending this uh, because it's, a rare joy to see, to help someone walk or help someone ride their bike for the first time. And that is how I feel when I teach these kids. And they're
Beautiful.
of all ages. When I say kids, they're my musical kids. Some of them are 60 years and above
Oh,
also.
okay. 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 So, I mean, as someone like you have given lecture demonstration at prestigious, universities like Stanford and Harvard. How do you see Indian classical music being, received by the younger global audience?
It's received really well. I mean, see, the reason Indian music is relevant is because it actually is structured at the core concept of the human social life. What
Mm-hmm.
is human social life? Although we have tied ourselves to 9 to 5 jobs,
Yeah.
at core, uh, roti, kapda, makan are the core necessities of
Yeah.
anyone anywhere in the world. Above that is where the wants come.
Mm-hmm.
As long as we are able to take care of roti, kapda, makan,
Mm-hmm.
then we are at our own liberty to explore the world the way we want.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to create a corollary for Indian classical music, then Tala Sur Nad, if that is a way to look at
Mm-hmm.
it, as long as you're able to stick to the core tenets of classical music. देखिए जैसे आपने कहा, if there is a rag bhoop, the rag bhoop comes with its own set of rules, and then you say you're doing a vilambit bandish in a tal called jumra, then
Mm-hmm.
it comes with its own code. But with these two deployed, once they are in motion, you can do anything you want with it.
Mm-hmm.
Something us human beings do at the core of our social structure, don't we? I mean, we get up every day, we are supposed to work, but the work is always dynamic depending on what the project that we are working on. We respond to Mother Nature depending on the time of the
Right.
year. So,
Right.
our life is very dynamic. In that dynamic life, we are allowed to make a lot of different choices within the structure of the 24-hour days that we follow. That is exactly classical music to you.
Right.
So it's very relevant as long as you're able to show it to the students
Right.
that this is the way classical music, it becomes very interesting. Talking of Stanford, every year I do a concert with Stanford Jazz.
Oh.
And 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 most of the years I also end up holding a lecture and demonstration. And these
Right.
are kids that have never heard Indian classical music or heard of Indian classical music. So it is interesting to break it down to them. So the
Right.
way I break it down to them is I say, okay, if I draw a circle and I
Right.
were to draw a triangle with all of the three points of the end points of the triangle touching the circle, how many triangles can I draw? And the answer is because the circle has infinite points, you can draw finite triangles. So the idea of creating an infinite within a finite space is what Indian classical music is. And then the students are blown away. They are like, oh, whoa, that is what it is. So that's a good starting point to create curiosity, create reverence for the art that has been over so many years, fine tuned, and
Yeah.
it has arrived at a level of sophistication that you can
Right.
deliver it with.
Right. Right. So, sir, you were also talking about your mother. I mean, Srimati Meenal Kaleji. I mean, she played a very crucial role in your early training. So, how did her guidance influence your musical foundation, and what did you learn from her that you still apply today?
Oh, everything. I mean, see, I your mother's heartbeat is your first sound,
Yeah.
and that is the sound you take to your grave. So I remember my mother every single day.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Double it. My mother was a musician. She was a homemaker, but her music was her first hobby,
Mm-hmm.
first passion. So between all the responsibilities that she had to take care of,
Mm-hmm.
whenever she had free time, she would go to music. She used to get up earlier than all of us rose to make sure
Oh.
that she had her Riyaz hours in. So that is something that I still feel inspired by. Long before I heard, or perhaps the term of gamification was coined, I think my mother used to teach me in a gamification way. What that means is she would hum a tune and say, can you guess what rag this alap is in? Or she would say, can you change this bandish into this rag? Or can you sing this bandish in that tal? Or can you make an alap of 4 avartans so that it does not go beyond this particular sur? So that is how I learned music. Even before I realized, there were just songs and tunes to me. There were no rags or tals, and it's the vocabulary was there, but for me, it was just a game to conquer.
I
So
mean,
it
you're fascinated by how she presented Hindustani classical music to you.
yes, yes. So that is how I learned. And at the core of Indian classical music, yes, there is the formats and the rules of the rag. But at the core of Indian classical music, I think what is most essential is the upaj, the impulse. So
Mm-hmm.
it's my mother's gift that I have that impulse of music. Wherever I go, I am ready to fly. I'm
Right.
ready to fly because that's how my initial perspective. So any concert, whenever I take my first breath, I'm ready to start. I start with what is a gift of Indian classical music.
Right, right, sir. So, I mean, you have been influenced by both the Agra and Jaipur Gharanas, yet, I mean, you do not believe in rigid compartmentalization of, music. So, how do you balance these traditional influences with a unique approach to Indian classical music?
I remember my Guruji, once we were in a session and then there was students of a university. I don't remember from where, but most likely from the US. A lot of white students entered.
Right.
And then they started asking various different questions. They were exposed to Indian classical music. So one of the students asked, what are gharanas? Can you tell us? And this is the answer that my Guruji gave in chest English. Uh, he said, there were kingdoms in different parts of India. There was
Yeah.
a kingdom in Gwalior. There was a kingdom in Agra,
Mm.
another in
Banaras. Yeah.
so another in Delhi, Banaras, Kehrala, and all of Sahaswan. And then the kings were fond of music, so they wanted to have one musician around them whenever they wanted or felt like listening.
Right, right,
So the style of the musician that sang at this particular kingdom
right,
was established as Bharat.
right.
And that's such a beautiful way. If you look at it, communication was least,
Mm-hmm.
transportation was not easy. So
Mm-hmm.
many things were automatically localized, which gave it a natural opportunity to grow the gharana or the style of music in a very vertical way.
Mm-hmm.
Now the transportation has changed, the access has changed. At a click of a button, you can listen to all gharanas. And then, if that is what you have access to, why not assemble beautiful flower arrangements from all the different gharanas to
Like,
make it
yeah,
come like a bouquet, to come make it come sit together well.
yeah.
So that is what I try to do. We are in a different age. Although I think the discipline the gharanas bring is very beautiful.
Mm.
It creates a wonderful perspective of or a style of looking at a rag presentation.
Right.
So I make sure that I adhere to few of the things that uh, make a gharana as an impressive style, but there is too much beauty around to not borrow from. Yes.
Correct, correct. So, is it tough to, create this balance? Is it tough for you?
No, it is very natural. Like I said, see, I live a life that is in the 21st century. And if I'm living a life in the 21st century and my music does not reflect that, then I'm singing someone else's music.
Right,
I
right.
want to make sure that when I sit and sing, I for sure, for certain, represent Indian classical music and its thousands of years of tradition.
Right,
But if a river is not flowing,
right,
it will stop,
right,
it
right,
stink. So I want to make sure that our classical music never stalls or stinks, keeps on flowing. So it has to have the sensibilities of the current life that we are living in.
Right, right. So, sir, I mean, as someone who excels in both live performances as well as playback singing, how do these two experiences differ for you and creatively and emotionally?
They are very different. I mean, the output is a song, but the experiences are very different. I'll tell you, live concert is like a cricket game. Okay. You go on the field and you start from zero.
Okay.
The weather conditions are at play, the pitch is at play, whether it is a swinging pitch, whether it's a spinning pitch, it is all at play, and you have to handle and improvise according to the conditions of the day. Classical music mehfil for you. Live concerts are like that because it was in Indonesia, it was extremely hot and humid. Oh, I was in New Zealand, it was very cold. And and then I was in India before that. So all different weathers uh, you have to deal with. They affect human anatomy as well as psychology, and you want to make sure that you prep and are able to bring out the best irrespective. Uh, a playback song is like a fine painting. You know, on working at it one stroke at a time, you probably rest, take a break if you need to, you again paint a little more. And only when you think the painting is ready to be displayed is when you put it out for the audience to see
Okay.
it.
Okay.
That is a recorded song for you. You can work at it until you feel you have done a good job. And then you like a painting once it is done.
Right, right, right. So, sir, I mean, Katya Kalja Khusli has been an integral part of your career. I mean, both as a singer and as a performer. What was the most rewarding aspect of being involved in such an iconic musical? Because you also won a national award for the same. But at the same time, as a musical, I mean, what are some of the most rewarding aspects of being associated with this particular musical play?
To me, the most rewarding thing associated with it is the original Sangeet Natak that movie is made from is musically composed by my beloved Guruji.
Yeah.
So to be able to sing, so for example, the Surat Piyaki that I sang, Hey Chanda Makaranda that I sang, all of these songs, all of those Dinagele Bhajana Vina Sare, Muralidhara Shama, the Tarana, all of them have been composed not in 67 because they were composed for the premiere of Natak that happened in 67.
Right.
Alongside, we had the wonderful Shankar Ehsan Loy creating magic with their own songs. So once I was able to represent Indian classical music tradition, sing the songs that my Guruji had composed, and represent the Indian classical music as something that was built today, all at once in the same movie. And I
Right.
feel very grateful. The national award that you mentioned, I actually won for a new song that Shankarji composed. It is well steeped in Indian classical music. So to be able to be recognized on a national platform for something that you love with all your heart, represent a tradition that is thousands of years of age was
Right.
something.
Right. So can you hum a line or two of Surati Piyaki or Aruna Kirani for our viewers?
Dim tana dim tana udadana dere na 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 अरुणि कर्णि धरणि गगन समके भ्रमित भ्रमर करि गुंजन हलके अधीर मन मम जणु सरित जल करित झर 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 धीम धन उदधन देर न धीम धन न धीम धन उदधन देर न धीम धन न धीम धन उदधन देर न.
Incredible, sir. Incredible. So, I mean, coming to the films, I mean, how will you think, Hindi and regional cinema are promoting, the rich tradition of Hindustani classical music? And at the same time, I also wanted to know your perspective on the current fusion trends, blending Hindustani classical music with other genres.
The role of the music director is not to further Indian classical music through their movies. It
Mm-hmm.
is to basically represent the story or the script that is at. It is the sensibilities of the musical directors. If they are trained, quite a few people use Indian classical music very beautifully. A.R. Rahman does, like I said, Shankar Hassan Loy do, Preetham does, Amit Trivedi. There are too many names to quote. I
Mm-hmm.
might. They use Indian classical music because they are trained and they have it in their sensibilities.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at it, I mean, the purpose of the musical music directors is not to further Indian classical music. That we have to first establish and recognize. But they do a very good job. I remember when I was a child, ta na ta
Bombay
ra
thing.
ra ra ra. This is Roja and ta 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 ra ra ta ta ra 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 ta ra ta ta ra 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 ta ta ra 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 so it has a beautiful classical undercurrent to it. So there are a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of different music directors who are using Indian classical music very
Mm-hmm.
well. Now, as far as your second question goes, what is my opinion about the current trends of
Yeah.
uh, fusion?
Mm-hmm.
Look, I love fusion music, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you why. We have to step back and understand what fusion is.
Mm-hmm.
When breath becomes sound, that is fusion, no?
Yes.
When sa meets another interval re, it is fusion of two notes.
Right. Right.
When a bandish meets a tal, that is another fusion.
Fusion. Yeah.
So there is fusion everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, when the divine, the God created Mother Earth, he did not say this is going to be called this country, that is going to be called that country. This music is for this region, that music is for that region. That is what we human beings did.
We created that. Yeah.
Why should we? There's no good reason.
Right.
I mean, as long as all human beings smile when they are happy, cry when they are sad, jump when they are excited,
Right.
we all have similar sensibilities. Then why don't we extend the expression of our sensibilities to a universal level as we can?
Right.
And of course, my mother, my household spoke Marathi. That's why I grew up as a Marathi. So when I
Mm-hmm.
think, I will think in Marathi.
Mm-hmm.
So when I am collaborating with something, very naturally the Indian classical music will be at the helm of that collaboration as far as my contribution goes.
Mm-hmm.
But we are living in a world where we are sharing a lot of beautiful things across the globe, aren't we? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, this was not made in India. This is not made in India. I'm sure your glasses weren't made in India. So, unknowingly, we are indulging in many things and that find value to our life. Why should we debar music from having that
Mm-hmm.
opportunity? I think whether the fusion is good or bad is going to be decided at the core by the intention with which you do it. So when I sing at Stanford Jazz, my intention is to bring Indian classical music to a platform
Mm-hmm.
where the audience might never go to a concert of Indian classical music.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's like a bait. I go there, I have saxophone, I have drums, I have keyboards, I have guitars, and whatnot. And in that envelope or layer, when I present Indian classical music, people say, "Oh, I know all these sounds, and this sound is very interestingly unique. I think I like it." And
Mm-hmm.
that's how I introduce Indian classical music to them. And it has worked over the years. I've seen a bunch of Stanford audience going to my traditional concerts
Right.
whenever I'm performing in the area.
Right.
So, fusion at core has existed since we have lived.
Right.
Um, I welcome fusion as long as it is done with the right intention.
Right. 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 So, sir, speaking of collaborations, I mean, you have worked with maestros like, Ustaz Zakir Hussain Sahab and, George Brooks and Trilo Gultuji. So, what can you tell us about these collaborations? How do you approach it? And, yeah, I mean, how do you approach these collaborations?
I look at it as a learning lesson, as a learning session. Uh, with age, we pretend, once we are out of the school, we pretend that we know it all and we are only supposed to be a master. But that's not true about
Mhm.
music. Just not one lifetime. I think it is a journey of multiple lifetimes. And then
Mhm.
when you get an opportunity to share space and music with these maestros who have been on this journey way longer, have lived a life, have performed more extensively than you have, then it'll be a mistake to try and do something of your own. You should just observe and learn. That is what I like to do.
Right.
Uh, Zakir ji is always extremely inspiring. He's extremely humble, extremely encouraging of us
Mhm.
youth. So he makes sure that you are extremely comfortable around him. Uh, he genuinely makes sure that your requirements are taken into consideration. He
Mhm.
gives you tips. I remember he helped me choose my microphone. He said, "You should carry your own microphone.
Okay.
Talk to that guy there." And I went and then I bought my microphone after a discussion with that guy. I've discussed about him about on stage monitoring, many different things, talking about how to make sure that we do not disrespect the legacy of Indian music through the pandemic times by
Mhm.
performing online on a
Mhm.
various different topics. And these are, life lessons. Of
Mhm.
course, when you're making music with him, it is a touch of divinity, and
Right.
it is something that you take as an ashirwad.
Right.
Similarly, with Trilok Kaka, Trilok Kaka has lived a very, very diverse life. He has been in the Western world for, I think, before I was born.
Yeah.
So he
Yeah.
has worked with some really prized musicians. His mother was an
Shobha.
extremely well-known Shobha Tai.
Yeah.
So he has a very unique training. We performed in Bangalore not too long ago,
Okay.
and again we stayed together, we traveled together, we ate together, and of course we played together. And like I said, I keep my antennas and ears the
Very
size of an
perceptive.
elephant. You have to be. I mean, when your formal school time ends, that does not mean that your learning has ended. It just means your learning has become 24 hours because you don't
Mhm.
have any bounds of school time anymore.
Mhm.
George
Mhm.
Brooks is also a very unique musician. He has learned Indian classical music from Prananath, Pandit
Mhm.
Prananath of
Mhm.
yesteryears from Kirana Gharana.
Mhm.
And he, of course, has this sensibility of jazz. So his compositions are a lot of fun. We
Right.
come together and we curate this Stanford Jazz every year. We include different musicians every year, so it stays dynamic. So, like I said, it's a wonderful experience to just. And I'll tell you what you do
Mhm.
when you are in a scenario when you actually collaborate, you learn from these musicians about music, about life. You learn a lot of new things about life,
Mhm.
but you also learn a lot of new things about yourself.
Yeah.
So, in every new experience, you find a bit of yourself. That is how I feel when I collaborate with all these maestros.
Beautiful, beautiful, sir. So now, sir, you have garnered a large following on social media. I mean, particularly on Instagram. So how do you use these platforms to connect with younger audiences and foster a love for Hindustani classical music?
You know, every platform has its pros and cons, but it also creates its own opportunity to interact with people beyond your geography. I have a master's degree in technology,
Yeah. Right.
otherwise.
Yes.
So I remind myself to use these platforms the
Right.
best I can. For
Right.
example, any place, as I narrated the Santa Cruz
And story. Yeah.
story to you, If I am in any beautiful place, then I end up feeling inspired to sing. And
Mm-hmm.
now, because you have a phone, I make sure that I record this inspiration and I upload it.
Upload it. Okay.
Yeah, I just share it as a reel. Sometimes I make a reel when I make people repeat stuff after me, make believe people. So I say maga reza ga ma ga reza so maga reza ga ma ga reza re ga ma pa da ma ga ma pa ga ma ga reza da. So all together ma ga reza ga ma ga reza re ga ma pa da ma ga ma pa ga ma ga reza. So then it becomes a gamified lesson, which is something to be conquered, something that gives you a lot of joy, satisfaction, but also gives you a little piece of music. And then to record and upload it, I make sure that it takes at least a few tens of repetitions. So there you go, you're married to the process. While
Right.
you're allured by the product, the most time you spend is with the process, and that is the beautiful zone to be in. So these are a few ways that I use social media.
Nice. So, finally, I mean, what's next for you in terms of musical projects? So, new avenues you would like to explore in the future, in the coming times.
So as you mentioned, for some reason there is a huge following of youth that have managed to garner. I don't know how, but they are there. So now I want to make sure that my musical journey has a a way to continue keeping their interests alive,
Right.
and over the years initiate more and more youth. So I'm doing a few experiments with sound. Some of
Oh,
them are in live music. There is a concept called infusion where I start as a traditional musician and then the sounds of music get infused and the piece
okay.
actually morphs from classical music to fusion music on the fly. Then I reinterpret a few classical bandishes that I have composed or a few that I sing. Along with this, I want to start recording songs, traditional songs that are bandishes, but not say that they are bandishes. They are just likable songs. Once you
Right.
like something, you don't discriminate and you
Right.
adopt. So I want to do a few song experiments in both live and recorded concerts. That's
Right.
what I'm looking forward to.
Right. So, yeah, that's it from my end. Thank you so much for joining. I mean, it was really motivating, really inspiring, really enlightening having this conversation with you. And yeah, I mean, I wanted to know, like, if I want to enroll myself in Mahesh Kale's School of Music, how do I go about it? And or for all our viewers as well.
So, if you wanted to enroll, you can just Google Mahesh Kale School of Music
Right.
or MKSM, Mahesh Kale School of Music,
Right.
.maheshkale.com.
Right.
And I'll tell you why I started. This was started during the pandemic where most of our known joys perished because we were stuck in one geography.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
music is a thing that you can take with you, you can
Right.
do in any scenario.
Right.
So I wanted the students to be able to partake in a sustainable weekly joy. That's where it came
Mhm.
from. That is how it has been curated.
Right.
My core mantra is anybody can sing. And I actually mean anybody can sing. If you haven't been to my concerts, I suggest you come. I make everyone sing. And they can all hold the sur well. There has not been a single place where people have sung
Yes.
badly.
Yes, sir.
It can be in Satara, it can be Singapore, it can be in Phaltan, it can be in Paris. It doesn't matter where I go. People
Right.
sing and they sing well.
Right.
Beyond the idea of singing well, the process or the journey of spending time with music
Hmm.
is what music is all about. Music is about experiencing the companionship of music, not worrying about how you sound when you are on the journey.
Right.
And at that core tenet, which is, based off of Indian classical music, is
Right.
what MKSM or
Right.
the Mahesh Kale School of Music is all
Right.
about.
Definitely, sir. I'm going to enroll very soon, and I'm looking forward to catching your live performance in India whenever you come
Me
here
too.
next time.
I'm coming for Diwali.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm singing in Kolkata, Dehradun, Baroda, Mumbai, Pune, Thane, and Nasik.
Right, right,
If you
right.
are close
And
to any of these.
I'm in Delhi, but I'll gladly fly to.
Dehradun, I heard it is only
Yeah,
240
exactly. I'll
kilometers from.
yeah, yeah. It's quite close. So I gladly come because I've been a huge fan of your music. Of
Thank you
so
so much, Manu.
thank you so much for joining, sir.